Welcome to another edition of The Big Q. Today we go into matters of land and how civil society organizations are working together with the government to ensure that women especially understand their rights, but also the population and where the green cities will place us when they come into place. And that's why I'm joined by Annie Kairaba, who is the Executive Director at the Rwanda Initiative for Sustainable Development. Thank you very much, ma'am, for making time to be with us, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Fiona.
Take us through a bit what RISD is all about and what your focus is.
Rwanda is a national organization, and it was established in 1997. We are a policy and advocacy organization, including research. And since we started, we were just looking at all policy issues. But for the last 20 years, I would say, we focused on land issues. And the reason we focus on land is because we realize land encompasses everything. If you look at political, if you look at social, if you look at the role the land disputes played in the genocide where the population was mobilized against each other to take their land. So we look at it also as a peace-building mechanism. So that's what really we focus on land.
So how do you come in and how do you complement the government in all this?
As a policy and an advocacy organization, we advocate for pro-poor policies, we advocate for gender equality policies. So in particular land, we do complement the policies or the framework of the government. In fact, we've played a very big role, I would say, when RISD was established in 1997. We realized that there were two major policies. There was villagization, umudugudu, and there was the organic land law. And there was a dispute at the time between the international community and the government in relation to villagization, umudugudu. So that really attracted our interest, and we went in to do research to look at what do the landowners themselves say. And two things came out which are driving our agenda until today. One is the landowners actually like the villagization because in a post-conflict, people wanted to live together, wanted to have coexistence. Second, the organic land law, we realized it should not come before the policy land law, but before the policy law. So we influenced the government to actually put aside the organic land law and start working on the land policy, which is in existence, which was passed in 2004. So we complement the efforts of the government. We guide the policy issues of the government. We are lucky, I would say, that most of the recommendations we make, the government does listen, and we move together.
So they're well received. Take us through, Mother, paint a picture of where land rights or issues were in the years before, you know, because I know land is it's a heritage for most African people. So take us through where we were before and where we are now in terms of land rights.
For example, before the current legal framework, women could not inherit land, or even girls. A girl child would only have land through male line, either from the father or from the brother. Women had no say in the land issues. They could not even have any accounts open. But since the current legal framework, when the land policy was introduced, there is equality, and it's clearly states that both boy child and girl child have equal inheritance. It's not only that. Rwanda was the first country in 1999 to pass the inheritance law that allows women equal rights as men. And now in the land reform process, in the land tenure regularization, when land is being registered, for example, family land, both men and women, husband and wife, have 50-50 equal. And if a husband dies, then the woman has the rights to, of course, with the children, but the 50% remain for a woman, and she can dictate for a man the other 50%. So I would say that Rwanda has come a very long way. If I look at other countries, for example, in Kenya or even Uganda, they're still fighting for 30%.
Yes.
But here, you would be a girl, single girl, you purchase land, you own it 100%. You could be married and you decide you have your own property and you have 100%. This doesn't exist in other countries. So I would say that Rwanda has come a long way. There are still gaps, of course, as we said that the legal framework has given right, but there are still challenges, especially cultural.
The cultural norms. That's what I was going to ask you about. How do we break the cultural norms? Because I'm sure, in as much as this has been achieved, there are women who say, no, that is not for me, absolutely. You know, I'll be breaking the taboos in the society.
However, I would say that still slowly, this is coming out. In fact, faster than I thought. If you look at, for example, in around 2002, 2003, when we were doing consultations with women on inheritance, women in the East, I remember when we went to Nyagatare, women didn't want to hear anything where they are going to ask for their rights. Women, for example, in Musanze, they believed that it's only a man who can make a decision. But today, you hear more women, and of course we have urban young girls coming up, the youth, are going to make this change. Some of them even for marriage regimes, they're beginning, the young people are beginning to take the individual ownership of property. That is a cultural breakthrough, which actually increases disputes. You've had the increase of divorce as land was being registered, as land was having more value. You could see the increase of divorce rate. This is because mainly it's attributed mainly on property. Because the woman feels threatened, she feels if she can take her part, then she's more safe. Men also don't want to legally marry. They want to come with stay with the women because they feel they are going into the equal sharing and women will not allow them to use their property the way they want. But I think slowly, I would say that Rwanda is moving very fast. There is another very big thing, the economy, actually. We have the land, you've registered, but how do you use it? Women are still scared to mortgage their land, to mortgage the property. And this is not only in Rwanda, I would say it's global. It's global, yes. It's a global issue where women are not yet bold enough to mortgage their property because they think about families. This is a female thing now, because we start wondering, oh, what if I mortgage this, the only house we have? What will happen? So we are not yet, I would say we are not yet assertive enough into business. If you look at the banks here, mortgage, even the bank populate, you look at the percentage of women who are taking loans, 1%. So in terms of private sector, in terms of business, in terms of use of our property, women, I would say, we are still really, the numbers are still very low. I think this should be the focus in the coming years.
But then where do they go to right now for them to understand that it is important to be part and parcel of the process, you know, because I'm sure we have people in the rural areas. In the urban areas, they can read and understand their rights, but then in the rural areas, who do they go to for them to actually say, what do I do here?
I think it's not whom do they go to, it's how do they know. So I think we need to put in more emphasis, civil society, create awareness. That's what we've been doing. That's what also other organizations do. And I think to some extent also the local leaders, but that's where they focus. However, personally, I don't advocate, in fact, to push women to give their property for mortgage. I would like to advocate the government to actually provide some framework where women can be given grants without mortgaging their property, because that way they will have incentive to go into business. Once they know that I have a grant, if I use it well, I have a possibility of getting more. Then they know how to handle money. They know how to deal with the banks. And this grant, if it is banked, and you get more when you've delivered maybe a report, how you've used it, that way in a software. I have seen it in Ethiopia, and it has a big motivation, where women are registering their land more, where women are registering their property more, to get more grant.
Yes.
So rather than risk, and of course we've seen it in many places where families are left on dispute, men normally don't mind too much,
they
because
can take the risk.
they can even go. They can even go away. They can leave the wife and the children. But for a woman, it would be the last thing for her to walk away from her husband, from her children. She even feel that it's an embarrassment. So I would like to focus more on actually advocating the government, and I think with the Ministry of Gender, we are beginning to engage them to see if there would be a special fund to motivate women to go into business using their property.
In terms of pandemic, what are you doing to ensure that we're not losing track? Because right now in the midst of COVID, I'm sure not everyone has technology or Wi-Fi or internet. What are you doing to ensure that the message is still loud and clear despite the pandemic? Because it's been 2-3 months down the line. I'm sure it has not stopped farmers from farming or women from ensuring that they have their rights.
Thank you very much for asking this question. In fact, a month ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago, I attended a meeting of land sector with the Land Use and Management Authority, and the issue of threat on the land rights came out very clearly, because some people are taking advantage of officials not moving, of people being poverty-driven today because they don't have finances, especially in the informal sector, and people are selling off their land, small pieces of land. They are selling off their houses informally. So this is destabilizing the land registration system, because transactions are done informally, but more so the poor people are selling their land because of lack of other alternatives. And we are saying, let's create more awareness. And for us, at least in RISD, we have the ICT system we have introduced. We work in a few districts, 12 now, but it can reach everywhere. So we have this toll-free line. And what we are doing is we are passing on messages on radio, supporting the land sector to inform people not to sell off their land, asking local leaders, please don't transact any sales, and especially the local, the communities, not to allow to sell their land at very low price, because if they went to local leaders, they would be able actually to be processed. Even now in COVID, in the lockdown, it can be. So this has been picked as a danger, and we are focusing on it to raise awareness, and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we do take a short break, but when we come back, of course, we're still talking about what the civil society, is trying to do to engage not only the citizens, but also the government in helping transform some of the policies that are in place. You told us what you're doing during this pandemic to ensure that the children, or rather the women, are still part and parcel of the process and are not being left behind. But the issue comes now into form of data. Data has always been an issue. How are you saving the data? Because I'm sure the millions of people have, land. How are you ensuring that this data is safe, but also is being used in the right way?
Thank you very much. The land tenure regularization process is digital.
Yes.
So our government has gone digital, and this is going very well. And for us, what we've done since 2016. We've also introduced the ICT system where we gather data electronically, and we have a server. So the kind of data we are normally putting in is for monitoring. So we monitor, for example, the land-related disputes, what type of disputes, and we share with the relevant ministries. We work with the Ministry of Justice, we work with the mediators to see the kind of data they are getting. We've introduced the use of mobile. We have focal persons. We are working in 12 districts, and we have 144 focal persons, and these people have mobiles they use and they send data. And why is this important? Before, when we are doing this manually, we would lose track. For example, in 2014, we had over 15,000 disputes that gathered, but we were not able to analyze. But now with this use of mobile,
Yes.
the information coming, and it has been formatted in such a way that we can tell gender issues, we can tell what type of disputes, and we can monitor to see the trend, whether these disputes are reducing or are increasing. We are looking at, in future, not far, we're actually trying to upgrade this system where we can link up with the banks. And of course with the Land Use and Management Authority to see if if people who are going for credits can actually rely on data from the local people. Because even when you are going to get a credit, you can check on the number given by Land Use and Management Authority, but you will not go deeper to know the disputes in the neighborhood that need mediation. So we are trying to work with the bank to be providing them with this data. And maybe I will provide this, you have not asked me, in terms of sustainability. We would like to be sustainable so that banks, other investors are paying for data from us. We've gathered a lot of data. You can imagine, since 2017,
Yes.
I mean, 1997. But we have not been able to use this data for value.
Yes.
We've socially used it. We are providing to influence the policy. But when we look at our, down the road, how do we become sustainable? Are we going to rely on donors? Once they cross, we cross.
Yeah.
When
How do you grow?
the community need us, when policymakers need us. So we are looking at this data for value, so that people will be paying for our data to have it. Thank you.
Protection of environment, green cities, climate change, all these have always been challenges and issues, especially when it comes to land matters. Because right now we know when it rains heavily, what happens to the wetlands where, we have seen people lose their lives in the process. What are you doing to ensure that they actually understand, for example, if it's a wetland, they peacefully live without necessarily losing their lives. But then again, the relocation of people to make room, say, for green cities. And in terms of climate change, what are you doing in all this process?
Thank you very much for asking that. In fact, we have just started a new project with City of Kigali and Rwanda Housing, in terms of smart city. And we started this beginning of the year. And this comes from the trend of issues, because from our research, we look at what are the trend of issues. So we've realized that in informal settlements, especially here in Kigali, when it rains, then people, as you say, people lose lives, and others every day today, they don't have proper sewage. So, and then you are asked to move somewhere, from somewhere you've lived maybe for the whole of your life.
Yes.
30 years, 50 years. You don't know anywhere else. We've actually did a pilot of the same program in Agatare, in Nyarugenge, where I worked with Nyarugenge district to actually do upgrading. And we worked with the community members so that community members buy in, community members can part with their land, and also the local leaders are not forcing for expropriation, but rather looking for alternative. So what we do community dialogue. There are so many informal settlements here, about 10,
Absolutely.
and those are environmentally at risk. It's hazardous. What we are doing now is we are developing one model. We are now in discussion with the Rwanda Housing and City of Kigali, what we are calling redevelopment. So we are going to work in Gasabo district, 2 sites, to see how we can actually bring coexistence between community members and investors. Because normally, when there is an area that needs to be developed, informal settlement, that communities at risk, normally communities encouraged to be expropriated, to move. But we are trying to see at the model of coexistence, whereby an investor can build densified building, where like high-raised building, where community members can be put, and what is good in not informal, in low-cost houses, and then there will be free land for an investor as a motivation. So the investor will be able to build low-cost houses for this person, proper with sewage, proper green, like green city, plants grown, and all that, and energy saving,
Yes.
that is environmentally approved, and then the investor has a motivation of having free land. So we are trying this in 2 areas, 2 sites, and our projection is maybe by 2021 we have something to show.
But do you think this will work? Because of course we have seen citizens refusing to move or saying, it's been 10 years since I was actually paid, and I gave out my land to this particular investor to build up this low-cost housing, or these apartments that we all want.
We are not asking these people to leave. When I say coexistence, it's like on this table, that's where these people are living now. So we are going to request an investor to move them here. That's coexistence. And His Excellency said this before, that when we are talking about urbanization, urbanization should be for all.
Yes.
It should be equal benefit. So we want to try this model. And our legal framework in informal development, informal settlement urbanization, then the legal framework provides us people should not move. If they move, they don't move away.
Yeah.
So we are already working with the community members. We're working with local leaders, Rwanda Housing, City of Kigali, and the whole model is called inclusive development of the informal. So nobody is going to move away. All we are saying is also the poor people, especially women, because in this formal settlement, almost 68% are women.
Yes.
They have young children who are established they go to school. These women live, the family live on the small scale businesses, selling vegetables. So if you send them in another area, where do they start? It means you are making them districts, actually. So that's why we are talking about this new model.
Yeah, absolutely. But before I let you go, of course, time is running out according to my director. Let's talk about the challenges quickly. What are the challenges that you faced along, over the last 23 years of this existence?
Yeah, thank you very much. I would say that we've registered a lot of exciting achievements. One of the challenge that we've seen, we are still struggling with, is the issue of, one, understanding our approach, because there is a myth that all NGOs should only go into service delivery or something like that. The other one is the myth that NGOs just can't deliver anything. They want big money. They have big money. I can tell you, Fiona, we use very little money in these bigger projects, and that's what really motivates us. In the first project we did in Ichero, we were depending on a budget of $20,000 US per year, and people didn't understand. But if you look at success in this Ichero village, it's very, very high. So we work with the communities. So I would say that the challenge is to change the mindset,
yeah.
on how NGOs should work, how NGOs are perceived. Right now, this project I'm talking about of City of Kigali, we are asked, but RISD, you've helped us only in community engagement. How are you going in infrastructure? We've convinced them that we can work with these other people in engineering, in partnership. So I would say that the understanding of the approach, and of course, it's not only in other stakeholders. I would say even in civil society itself, that's another challenge. Collaboration,
yes.
How can we work together? How can we support each other? So that if some people have maybe capacity with working with women, others have in education, how can we work together to actually serve a community? Even if it is one district where we are working, how can we collaboratively work together? I would say those are the challenges.
Well, thank you very much for making time to be with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, my name is Fiona Mbabazi. To keep it the big Q, enjoy the rest of our viewing.